What is going on, coin traders? Looking at Bitcoin right now, and specifically going to focus on some of the shorter time frame charts. So right now, sitting and looking at the 4-hour, because do want to talk about this current consolidation setup right now that we have that has been finding a very nice line and support level that has been right into the upside on this 12-period exponential moving average. So if you do enjoy this type of content and analysis, let me know by hitting the thumbs up button and make sure to subscribe if you're not for future updates. And so, yeah, I guess one of the first things that I want to do is let's specifically dive in and talk about this exponential moving average a little bit more for this 12 period or this 12 period for the 4-hour chart. And so notably right now, and let's go ahead and turn off the 26 and the 50. So if we zoom in right now and talk about this 12 period, there's only been 2 times, or effectively 3 times, but 1 major test and 2 major tests, where on this initial retrace, we actually wicked down below. So if we look at the most recent 4-hour bars, we're actually finding very nice price line support. So this is going to be a really good guide. And if we do end up breaking bearish from this, right now price is at 21,102.43. So if we do end up breaking bearish below this, then that's going to be a pretty significant indication, especially if we do form a close. Now we do have basically a whole 4 hours left on this brand new candle since the day just printed. But we know that this is such a very strong and relevant line right now that if we do end up seeing prices wick down and actually form that close, that's going to be one of the surefire signs that we're going to look to first, especially since we have been finding a lot of short-term momentum on this Bitcoin price chart. So the next point we would actually look at would end up being the 26 period. And if we zoom out, you can see that we haven't tested that since basically a while, kind of about a week or so ago. So the fact that we would be seeing a potential break and a potential test actually could still be a good sign for bulls, because ultimately that would mean setting a higher low than what we experienced on a more recent low when prices came in at 2060.1145. Quite honestly, though, I'm thinking that if we do end up breaking exponential moving average support as well as this big price line support right now at 21,101, then that's going to be a pretty good sign that the bears are going to be in control for the short term. And likely in that instance, we are going to experience and expect a little bit more downside pressure. And so right now, let's actually turn on the technicals. Let's look at the RSI, the Relative Strength Index, because we actually have a very big and obvious downtrend in this RSI price since we did peak, which RSI for 4-hour came in at 92.52. So we are getting a lot more of that bullish divergence here, where we do have prices actually increasing on this trend, yet the RSI is decreasing on its trend. And so if we actually turn on volume 2, you can see that our biggest peak for volume actually came in before we actually got our current price high for this trend, which is coming in right now at 21,595. So just shy of that 21,600 level. And so that really is going to be the point that we actually have to top out if we do want to see bullish continuation. But right now, especially with being just so overextended on the longer time frames, we're going to look to actually have this shift in the current Bitcoin momentum. Now, if we flip over and look at the 6-hour chart, we want to draw a very resistive price line to the upside coming in at 21,258. So you can see that this whole period, we've just been unsuccessful of having a candle break and close above for the bulls. So this is actually an extremely strong level that has been holding up for several days now. And so especially when we look at the volume again, and we've actually seen decreased overall bullish volume, and then even the most recent attempt that we have seen that was a little bit more bullish in the amount of volume coming in, still ended up only being a doji candle, showing a lot of uncertainty and indecision for both the bears and the bulls, but still maintained a close below this big resistance point. So essentially what this means is that if we can ultimately end up forming a nice hold above this rising trend line, then we could see a big bullish breakout if we do get a lot of increased volume and actually close on top of this big line at 21,258. Like we said, though, given the overbought conditions for the longer term charts, that does appear less likely. And in these types of patterns and setups, despite having an initial bullish impact due to the direction heading into this overall consolidation period, when we do get overextended on the longer time frame charts, these type of patterns don't normally favor the bulls as heavily as typically they would in effectively normal market conditions that aren't overbought. So now I want to flip over to the really quick time frames right now. So looking at the 5-minute, and the reason I want to talk about this is because when we're in very strong bullish uptrends, then we typically do look at the shorter time frames since momentum is based on shorter time frames. So for example, we can still continue to see upside momentum despite bigger, longer overbought charts. And the thing is that when we look at patterns like we're seeing now, typically you can see what a good guide this 5-minute chart is on this RSI. So for example, right now, 5-minute oversold conditions is always a very nice target that we look for when we talk about pullbacks. In addition to that, you can also see that every single 5-minute overbought indicator also resulted in a pretty quick traceback or retracement. And so that's why it's important to always find charts that work for you. So as soon as we do end up changing the trend on some of these shorter term charts, that's when we're really going to think that we could be looking at a pullback on the larger scale. Because until that does happen, then ultimately we are still riding upside short-term momentum. So really, I think what it's going to come down to is a break of these two price lines on the shorter term. So resistance points up overhead at 21,404. So you can see unsuccessful attempts to break above all these last times. And so for support, we're actually looking at a trend line, but if we look at an actual individual price line as well, we're approaching it pretty quick. And we've talked about it before, pretty much right around the 21,100 line. And effectively, this could extend down to about 20,060. So this is really going to be a big point that we have to defend heavily if the bulls actually do want to see continuation, testing this resistance point and having that big bullish breakout. So at this point, the longer the bulls do take to actually break through this short-term resistance point does mean a greater likelihood of a retracement to test this lower support once again. And if we turn on volume, you can see that we've actually had a lot more bearish volume starting to come in, especially since even on the peak bull volume, we weren't able to get prices to continuously stay on top of this resistance point. And there definitely wasn't enough follow through to try again. So we're knowing that there's a lot of uncertainty right now. And that's one of the reasons that the overall hype in the crypto space is just so euphoric right now, that the risks of downside are growing a lot more continuously. Now, in the shorter term, if we look at the 15-minute, for example, we're looking at a pretty big defense right now of the support line. And so if we actually look at another big resistance point inside this overall channel and zone, we're going to see resistance coming in right at this middle price line, which is going to be right about 21,300. So if I had to make a prediction and an assumption, I would expect a little bit of a rally towards this level and then probably seeing rejection again to test the support. And then I think from there, we could likely end up seeing a bearish break below the support line. So if that does happen, then we would be looking at a price level of about 29.50. But then ultimately at that point, we would be talking about blowing out some of these lower lows, since we've pretty much at that point confirmed a trend change on some of the other middle time frame charts. So that is what we're going to be looking at over the next coming day. And would also definitely love to know your thoughts down in the comments sections below. If you have watched this far all the way to the end, do appreciate it. That is going to wrap up our show for now, though. So if you did enjoy, please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. Do appreciate all the continued love and support. As always, does mean so much. Stay safe, take care, and I'll catch you back in the next video.